The pregnancy test sat in our bathroom trash can like evidence at a crime scene. Two pink lines, bold and undeniable, partially wrapped in tissue but visible enough to stop my world. November 14th, a Thursday. I genuinely called in sick from Cincinnati Distribution Corp with a 102-degree fever, became the day everything I thought I knew about my marriage crumbled. I stood there in my boxers and sweat-soaked t-shirt, gripping the bathroom counter for support. Not from the flu that had knocked me flat for 2 days, but from the implications of those two pink lines. The vasectomy I'd gotten 2 years ago in that sterile Dayton clinic made this biologically impossible. The doctor had been thorough, showing me test results 3 months post-procedure. Zero sperm count. Shooting blanks, as he'd crudely put it. I'd never told Jessica. After her third miscarriage had nearly broken her, after watching her sob in that hospital bed questioning her worth as a woman, I'd made the decision alone. Better to let her think we were still trying than to remove her hope entirely. "Tommy, you okay in there?" Jessica's voice from that morning echoed in my memory. She'd checked on me before leaving for work at 6:30 a.m., her lips cool against my burning forehead, bringing water and ibuprofen like the concerned wife she'd played so perfectly. "I hate leaving you like this, but the Johnson & Johnson presentation can't be rescheduled." Johnson & Johnson. I knew that account inside and out. Jessica had been managing it for 3 years at Procter & Gamble. They always met in the dedicated conference room at P&G's downtown headquarters, never off-site. So why had her expense report last week shown a $340 charge at the Marriott downtown for J&J client dinner? I picked up the pregnancy test with trembling hands, studying it like it might reveal more secrets. The digital kind would have been clearer, pregnant or not pregnant, but Jessica always bought the traditional ones. More reliable, she'd say, buying them in bulk from Amazon, taking one every month even when I knew the timing was wrong, even when I knew it was impossible. My phone sat on the nightstand where I'd left it after calling in sick. 17 unread messages from work. Patricia, my assistant, checking if I needed anything, my team leads confirming tomorrow's supply chain meeting, routine stuff that suddenly seemed to belong to a different life. I ignored them all and opened our shared Google Calendar instead. Jessica's schedule was meticulously organized, color-coded by category. Blue for P&G meetings, green for personal appointments, purple for her new obsession. Fertility yoga with David Winters at the Holistic Wellness Center. The purple had started appearing 3 months ago, every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7 p.m., with occasional special workshops on weekends. I scrolled back to late October, my finger stopping on the 28th, the start of Jessica's fertile window. She tracked it obsessively across 3 different apps, all synced to her phone and our shared cloud storage. October 28th through November 2nd, her peak fertility days. Where had I been? Seattle. 5 days of meetings with Amazon's supply chain team, designing their new distribution center logistics. Dates I couldn't have moved even if I'd wanted to. Jeff's team didn't reschedule for anyone. But Jessica's calendar for those days showed interesting entries. October 31st, evening presentation, Marriott conference room. November 1st, J&J quarterly review dinner. November 2nd, team building event, location TBD. I knew she hadn't presented anything at the Marriott. I'd have seen the PowerPoint in our shared drive. The J&J quarterly review was always a lunch meeting, not dinner. And team building events required HR approval and appeared in the company-wide calendar. None of these were there. My laptop sat on the dresser and I grabbed it, still feeling dizzy but now unsure if it was the fever or the adrenaline. Our accountant had linked all our accounts last year for tax purposes, checking, savings, credit cards, even Jessica's P&G expense account. Makes quarterly filing so much easier, he'd said. Full transparency for the IRS. Full transparency. I pulled up Jessica's October expense report. The Marriott charge was there, properly categorized as client entertainment with a receipt attached. But the receipt was weird. Just a credit card slip. No itemized bill showing what was actually purchased. The kind of receipt you get when you pay at the hotel front desk, not the restaurant. 3 more charges jumped out. September 18th, $280 at the Westin. August 23rd, $310 at the Renaissance. July 30th, $295 at the Marriott again. All client entertainment. All with the same vague receipts. All on Thursday evenings after her 7 p.m. yoga class. My phone buzzed. Jessica texting. Feeling any better, babe? Don't forget to take the antibiotics, doctor. Morrison prescribed. I might be late tonight. David is doing a special fertility workshop after regular class. This could be our month. David Winters. Even his name sounded like something from a self-help book. Jessica had discovered him through a Facebook group for women struggling with fertility. Hundreds of desperate women sharing tips and miracles. David was their latest guru, a former physical therapist who'd developed a revolutionary mind-body approach to conception. His website promised breakthrough results where medical science fails, and featured dozens of testimonials from grateful couples holding babies. I opened a new browser tab, typing his name into Google. The first page was all positive. His wellness center's website, glowing reviews, a feature in Cincinnati Magazine about alternative fertility treatments gaining mainstream acceptance. But I'd learned from supply chain investigations that the real information lived on page 2 and beyond. Page 2 told different stories. A settled lawsuit from Columbus, details sealed behind an NDA, but the filing publicly available. Inappropriate relationship with client, and breach of professional ethics appeared in the complaint. Another case from Cleveland, similar language, also settled quietly. A Reddit thread titled, "Anyone else suspicious of David Winters?" With dozens of deleted comments and one remaining, check the timing of his success stories against the husband's travel schedules. You'll see a pattern. My hands shook as I opened a new spreadsheet, my analytical brain taking over. Column A, Jessica's fertile windows for the past 6 months. Column B, my travel schedule. Column C, her Thursday evening client dinners. Column D, David's Instagram posts about breakthrough sessions and transformative private consultations. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in slow motion. Every one of Jessica's fertile windows in the past 4 months had aligned with either my travel or late Thursday meetings. Every mysterious expense report corresponded with a yoga class night. David's success story posts always came 6 to 8 weeks after these alignments, the exact timing for pregnancy confirmation. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the peephole, I saw our elderly neighbor holding a package. "Thomas? This got delivered to us by mistake," she called out. I opened the door just enough to take the box, mumbling thanks through what she probably assumed was flu congestion. It was Jessica's latest order from yet another fertility supplement company. $200 worth of vitamins and herbs that promise to optimize your body's natural conception abilities. The irony made me want to laugh or scream or both. Apparently, her body had optimized just fine with David's help. Back at my laptop, I made a decision that would define the next several months of my life. The emotional part of me wanted to confront Jessica immediately, to rage and demand answers. But the logical part, the one that managed million-dollar supply chains and complex logistics networks, knew better. I needed proof. I needed documentation. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before making any moves. I created a new email account from an anonymous browser. TB Investigations 2024 at protonmail.com. Then I searched for private investigators in Cincinnati, reading reviews, checking credentials. Mitchell Investigations stood out. Licensed, bonded, experienced with infidelity and corporate fraud cases. Frank Mitchell answered on the second ring. "Mr. Mitchell, I need your services. I believe my wife is having an affair, possibly connected to expense fraud at her company." His voice was professionally neutral. "I see. Are you looking for evidence for divorce proceedings or both divorce and potential corporate misconduct? She works for Procter & Gamble. I need everything documented legally and ethically. No illegal surveillance, nothing that would compromise legal proceedings." Understood. Ohio's a no-fault divorce state. but financial misconduct during marriage is relevant for asset division. Fraudulent use of marital assets can affect settlement outcomes significantly. Can you come by my office tomorrow? I'll be there at noon. I was already planning the lie, a distribution emergency at work that required my immediate attention. Bring any documentation you have. Receipts, schedules, anything suspicious. After hanging up, I sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The fever was real, making everything feel surreal, like I was watching someone else's life implode. But the pregnancy test in my hand was solid, undeniable, evidence of a betrayal that went beyond simple infidelity. That evening, Jessica came home around 9 p.m., glowing with an energy I now recognized as post-coital rather than post-yoga. She moved through our bedroom carefully, assuming I was asleep, humming something under her breath. Her gym bag smelled wrong, not like the usual mixture of rubber mats and essential oils, but like men's cologne. Expensive cologne, the kind that lingers in hotel elevators. "How was the workshop?" I asked, my voice genuinely hoarse. She jumped slightly, then came to sit on the edge of the bed. "Oh, you're awake!" It was transformative. David worked with me on some breathing techniques, helping release the trauma from the miscarriages. He says that's what's blocking conception. Stored trauma in my pelvic floor. Stored trauma in her pelvic floor. The bullshit was so elaborate it was almost impressive. He recommends private sessions to really break through, she continued, her hand on my forehead checking my temperature. They're expensive, $500 per session, but several women in the group have had success after just a few private sessions. $500 to sleep with desperate women. The man had built a perfect predatory system. "Whatever you need, Jess," I managed to say. "We've been trying for so long." She squeezed my hand, and I noticed her wedding ring was turned inward, the diamond facing her palm. "I knew you'd understand." "Oh, and I have more client dinners coming up. Year-end push, you know how it is." P&G wants us to really wine and dine the big accounts. "Which accounts?" "Oh, you know, the usual suspects. J&J, Kimberly-Clark, maybe some of the newer partnerships." She was already moving away, heading to the bathroom. "You should rest, baby." That fever feels pretty bad still. That night, I pretended to take NyQuil and pass out early. But I lay awake listening to Jessica in our ensuite bathroom, humming that same tune while running the shower for 45 minutes. When she finally came to bed, she stayed on her side, scrolling through her phone with the brightness turned down. In the reflection of her glasses, I could see she was texting constantly, typing, deleting, typing again. The notification sound was off, but the screen lit up repeatedly with responses. At one point, she typed for a full minute, then deleted everything and put the phone down. Then picked it up again immediately, as if drawn by a magnet. This went on until nearly 2 a.m. The next morning, Friday, she left early for what she claimed was a breakfast meeting with the digital marketing team. But she wore her Chanel suit, the $3,000 one she'd bought for her promotion celebration, and only wore for the most important presentations. Her calendar showed no meetings until 2 p.m. I watched from the kitchen window as her BMW backed out of the driveway. She was on the phone before she even reached the street, gesturing animatedly with one hand while driving. The kind of conversation you have with someone intimate, not a colleague about quarterly projections. Mitchell's office occupied the second floor of a strip mall in Blue Ash, sandwiched between a tax service and a nail salon. The location was deliberately nondescript, the kind of place you could enter without being noticed. Frank Mitchell himself looked exactly like a retired cop should. Gray hair cut short, sharp eyes that missed nothing, coffee stain on his tie that suggested long hours and too much caffeine. "Tell me everything," he said, pulling out a legal pad. "Start from the beginning." I laid out the timeline, the pregnancy test, the vasectomy Jessica didn't know about, the fertile windows aligning with my travel, the suspicious expenses, David Winters and his fertility yoga. Mitchell took notes without judgment, occasionally asking for clarification. His poker face was professional, but when I mentioned David's name, something flickered in his eyes. "I know that name," he said, setting down his pen. "You're not my first client with concerns about Mr. Winters." Had a case last year, but the husband decided not to proceed with surveillance. What happened? Can't share client details, but I can tell you his methods follow a pattern. Vulnerable women, fertility issues, building trust through group classes before suggesting private sessions. He's careful, never promises medical results, always frames it as wellness and energy work. Legally gray enough to avoid medical fraud charges. Can you prove an affair without bedroom surveillance? The thought of cameras in our house made me physically ill. Don't need to. Public space documentation, financial records, behavioral patterns. Judges aren't stupid. Plus, if she's using company funds, that's a separate issue entirely. P&G has one of the strictest expense policies in corporate America. They prosecute fraud aggressively. We discussed terms, boundaries, legalities. Mitchell would track Jessica's movements in public spaces only. No hacking, no illegal surveillance, nothing that would compromise eventual legal proceedings. He'd use only publicly accessible information and observation from public property. The retainer was substantial but would come from my inheritance account. Money from my father's estate that remained separate property under Ohio law. One more thing, Mitchell said as I stood to leave. The other case I mentioned? The client who decided not to proceed? His name was irrelevant, but I can tell you this. David Winter's wife hired her own investigator around the same time. Melissa Winters was building her own case. The implications hung in the air. His wife suspects? More than suspects, I'd imagine. She's been posting interesting things on social media. Cryptic, but if you know what to look for, she knows something. Might be worth monitoring that situation. He handed me a business card with his cell number handwritten on the back. Call me directly if anything urgent comes up. I'll start surveillance immediately. Driving back to work, I felt the strange calm that comes with having a plan. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was about truth, documentation, protection. The revenge would come later, served at exactly the right temperature. At the office, I threw myself into work with unusual intensity. Patricia, my assistant, noticed immediately. Thomas, you sure you should be here? You look terrible and you were just out sick yesterday. Needed to get out of the house. Can you pull the Q4 travel schedule? I need to review my commitments. She printed the calendar, and I studied it like a battle plan. 3 trips in December, 2 in January. Each one an opportunity for Jessica to schedule client dinners and evening presentations. But now I'd be watching, documenting, building my case. Everything okay? Patricia asked, her concern genuine. We'd worked together for 5 years. She could read my moods like a supply chain readout. Just planning ahead? Might need to make some personal adjustments to the schedule. That evening, Jessica came home with takeout from our favorite Thai place, the one where we'd had our 3rd date, where I'd proposed 4 years later, where we'd celebrated her promotion to senior marketing manager. The nostalgia felt like mockery now. Figured you weren't up for cooking, she said brightly, unpacking pad thai and spring rolls. How was your day? Feeling better? Much better. The fever broke. Good, because I have amazing news. She pulled out her phone, showing me David's Instagram. He's offering a couples fertility workshop next month. I know you're skeptical about the yoga stuff, but maybe if we went together, it could help us connect on this journey. I looked at the post. David Winters, all white teeth and manufactured wisdom, surrounded by grateful couples. Some holding babies, others with hands placed lovingly on pregnant bellies. The caption read, "Creating miracles through connection and consciousness. Next couples workshop December 15th. Limited spots available." Sure, I heard myself say. Sign us up. Jessica's surprise was genuine. Really? You'd do that? Whatever it takes, right? She kissed me then, and it tasted like betrayal mixed with Thai spices. But I kissed her back, thinking of the pregnancy test now hidden in my office safe, the evidence that would eventually set me free. Mitchell called the next morning, Saturday, while Jessica was at her emergency team meeting, which, according to her location sharing that she'd forgotten was still active, was actually at David's Wellness Center. Your wife entered the Marriott downtown at 8:47 p.m. Thursday night. Valet ticket confirms. David Winter's Tesla arrived at 9:03 p.m., same garage. They exited together at 11:45 p.m. through the main lobby. I have time-stamped photos. She told me she was at a client dinner. The hotel restaurant closed at 10 p.m. I checked. Also, I pulled the public business registry. Winter's Wellness Center is bleeding money. He's behind on rent, has 2 tax liens. The man's desperate. So he's using these women for money too. The $500 private sessions aren't going to yoga. I tracked 3 other women from the Thursday class to various hotels over the past month. Your wife isn't his only private client. The rage I felt was cold, calculated. Not hot jealousy, but icy contempt for a man who'd built a business model on exploiting desperate women's dreams of motherhood. Keep documenting everything, I told Mitchell, and look into his wife more. If she's building her own case, maybe there's a way to share information. Already on it. Melissa Winters has been quite active on Facebook. Posts about truth coming to light and DNA doesn't lie. I think she had their youngest child tested. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. Jessica's Thursday yoga classes that ended with hotel visits. Expense reports filed for client entertainment that never happened. David's Tesla appearing wherever Jessica's BMW went. Mitchell documented everything with timestamp photos, parking receipts, even weather conditions for context. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mitchell called me on a Tuesday morning, excitement in his usually neutral voice. You need to see what Melissa Winters just posted. He sent me a screenshot from Facebook. Melissa had shared an article about paternity fraud with the comment, "When you discover your youngest child isn't biologically yours after 3 years." Ladies, if your husband offers fertility coaching, ask for references. And maybe a DNA test. She knows, I said. She more than knows. I did some digging through public records. She filed a separation agreement last week, then withdrew it. I think she's building her case just like we are. Can we reach out to her? Not directly, that could be construed as harassment. But if she happened to receive anonymous information about her husband's current activities. We spent the next hour crafting the perfect revelation package. Photos of David and Jessica entering hotels, timestamps matching his supposed client sessions. The prenatal clinic visit Mitchell had captured the previous Tuesday. David holding Jessica's hand as they entered the building. Her obvious pregnancy symptoms captured in high resolution. All public spaces, all legally obtained. The note was simple. Your husband is currently involved with Jessica Bradley from P&G. She's pregnant. Check his client billing against these dates. The Thursday 7 p.m. class seems to be his hunting ground. When should we send it? I asked. This Thursday, during the yoga class. Maximum impact, witnesses present. If Melissa shows up, which I think she will, the confrontation will be public. What about Jessica? She'll be there. She never misses Thursday class. I went home that night knowing the fuse was lit. Jessica was in the kitchen, attempting to cook again. This time, a recipe from a fertility cookbook she'd bought on Amazon. Conception-boosting quinoa bowl, the page read. The smell of burnt grains filled the air. Honey, I'm trying, okay? She said, frustration evident as she scraped blackened quinoa from the pan. David says nutrition is crucial for conception. He gave me this whole meal plan. David says a lot of things. She turned, wooden spoon in hand. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that he seems to have opinions on everything. Nutrition, yoga, breathing, probably interior decorating too. He's helping us, Thomas. Why are you being like this? You said you'd support this journey. I wanted to tell her then. Wanted to throw the pregnancy test in her face, show her Mitchell's photos, reveal that I knew about every hotel visit, every fraudulent expense report, every lie she'd told. But timing was everything in logistics, and this shipment wasn't ready for delivery. You're right. I'm sorry. Work stress, I guess. She softened, coming over to kiss my forehead. You're still warm? Maybe you're not fully recovered from that flu. Why don't you lie down? I'll bring you some tea. I went to our bedroom but didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed our finances on my laptop. Joint accounts totaling $47,000. Separate property from my inheritance, $230,000. The house, bought with inheritance money for the down payment but mortgage paid from joint funds. Complicated ownership that would require legal untangling. Jessica's 401k, my 401k, both substantial but separate. Her P&G stock options, vested and unvested. The fertility treatments had cost us nearly $30,000 over 3 years, all from joint savings. The supplements, yoga classes, David's private sessions, another $15,000 at least. My phone buzzed. Mitchell. Winters just posted on Instagram. Big changes coming. Sometimes the universe demands truth. Stay tuned for a major announcement. His wife must be closing in. Thursday arrived gray and cold. Typical November in Cincinnati. The sky threatened snow but delivered only icy rain. Jessica left for work in a rush, forgetting her lunch, forgetting to kiss me goodbye, forgetting that she'd left her fertility tracking app open on the iPad we shared. According to the app, she was 2 days late. The pregnancy was taking hold. Big presentation today, she called out while grabbing her keys. Might run late, then yoga at 7, don't wait up. I went to work as normal but accomplished nothing. Every email felt irrelevant, every meeting pointless. Patricia rescheduled my afternoon, sensing something was wrong but professional enough not to pry. At 6:45 p.m., Mitchell texted, "Package delivered to M. Winters. She's in her car outside the wellness center now." At 7:05 p.m., "She's going in." Looks determined. At 7:23 p.m., "You need to hear this." He called immediately. I was in the parking lot, window cracked. The confrontation was spectacular. "Tell me everything." Melissa walked straight into the studio during opening meditation. The whole class was in child's pose when she said, loud and clear, "David, we need to talk." Now. Everyone looked up. Your wife tried to slip out the back, but Melissa saw her. "You're Jessica, right? From the photos?" "Stay, this concerns you too." "What happened?" David tried to maintain his guru calm, suggested they talk privately. Melissa laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Privacy? Like the privacy you gave our marriage?" "No, these women deserve to know what kind of man is teaching them about fertility and consciousness." Mitchell continued. They went into his office, but Melissa left the door open. Everyone could hear. She had DNA results proving their youngest isn't his. She accused him of sleeping with clients for years, using his position to prey on vulnerable women. Then she asked Jessica directly, "Are you pregnant with my husband's baby?" What did Jessica say? Nothing at first. Then she threw up in his trash can. Straight up vomited from stress or morning sickness. Tried to run after that, but Melissa had more photos. David at the prenatal clinic, hotel receipts she'd found, credit card statements showing the pattern. She announced she was filing for divorce and suggested Jessica's husband might want to know his wife was pregnant with another man's child. The justice of it was beautiful. Public humiliation, witnesses, undeniable truth. One of the students recorded it, Mitchell continued. It's already on TikTok. The wellness center owner showed up within 30 minutes, fired David on the spot. Liability issues, you understand? Can't have an instructor sleeping with students, especially vulnerable ones seeking fertility treatment. I pulled up TikTok on my phone. The video was already gaining traction. Shaky phone footage, but the audio was crystal clear. Melissa's voice, calm but devastating. 4 years of fertility treatments while you're impregnating students? We're done, David. And ladies, check your credit card statements. Those energy healing sessions were just hotel rooms. The comments were already pouring in. People identifying Jessica from her P&G marketing campaigns. She'd been in a company commercial about empowering women in business just last month. Someone had tagged P&G's official account. Is this your senior marketing manager? With crying laughing emojis. Which meant it was time for phase 2. I opened my laptop, navigated to P&G's ethics hotline. The online form was comprehensive. allowing for detailed reports with attachments. I spent an hour crafting the perfect complaint. I am reporting Jessica Bradley, Senior Marketing Manager, for systematic expense fraud. Over the past 4 months, Ms. Bradley has submitted fraudulent expense reports totaling approximately $10,000. These supposed client entertainment charges were actually personal expenses related to an extramarital affair. Specific examples include October 31st, $340. Marriott charge claimed as J&J client dinner. No J&J meeting scheduled that day. September 18th, $280. Weston charge claimed as Kimberly Clark presentation. No such presentation occurred August 23rd. $310. Renaissance charge claimed as team building dinner. No team members present. All charges correspond to Thursday evenings after 7 p.m., aligning with Ms. Bradley's yoga class schedule. The hotels were used for personal encounters with David Winters, her yoga instructor. This can be verified through hotel security footage and Mr. Winters' social media posts about private sessions on these exact dates. This violation of P&G's expense policy constitutes fraud and theft of company funds. Ms. Bradley's actions have also created significant reputational risk for P&G, as videos of her involvement in a scandal at the Holistic Wellness Center are currently going viral on social media. Evidence is available upon request. I trust P&G will investigate this matter with appropriate seriousness. I submitted the report at 11:47 p.m., knowing it would be in the ethics team's inbox first thing Friday morning. Jessica came home at 1 a.m. I heard her car in the driveway, the garage door opening slowly like she was trying to be quiet. But then she sat in her car for 20 minutes. I watched from the upstairs window as the interior light stayed on, saw her hunched over the steering wheel. When she finally came inside, her face was swollen from crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, despite obvious attempts to clean it off. She saw me waiting in the living room and froze. Thomas? Rough yoga class? She started crying again, ugly sobs that might have moved me once. It's not what you think. I pulled out the pregnancy test from my pocket, set it on the coffee table between us. Really? Because what I think is that you're pregnant, and I had a vasectomy 2 years ago. The color drained from her face. You… what? After your third miscarriage, after watching you nearly die from hemorrhaging, after the doctor said another pregnancy could kill you. I couldn't put you through that again. But I also couldn't tell you because you wouldn't have stopped trying, so I protected you the only way I knew how. You lied to me. For 2 years you lied. And you didn't. How many client dinners were actually David Winters? How much of P&G's money did you spend on hotel rooms? I have receipts, Jessica. All of them. She stood up, swaying slightly. I'm keeping the baby. I wouldn't expect anything else. But you should know P&G's ethics department will be investigating your expense reports starting tomorrow morning. I'd prepare an explanation if I were you. You reported me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Someone did. That TikTok video has 2 million views already. Your company was bound to find out. The person who reported it just made sure they had the specifics. She ran to the bathroom, more sounds of sickness. I didn't follow. Instead, I called Catherine Morrison, the divorce attorney I'd retained the week before. Catherine, it's time. Can you file tomorrow? Everything's prepared. Divorce petition citing financial misconduct, documentation of the affair, fraudulent use of marital assets. We're asking for the house as separate property since you inherited the down payment, plus damages for the misappropriated funds. What about the pregnancy? Complicates things emotionally, not legally. She's entitled to child support from the biological father, not you. The vasectomy documentation proves you're not responsible. When Jessica emerged from the bathroom an hour later, she'd packed 2 suitcases. Her hands shook as she gathered her jewelry box, her laptop, the framed photo of us from our wedding that sat on the dresser. Where are you going? I asked. My sister's. Good choice. Your meeting with HR is at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. She stopped at the bedroom door. How long have you known? Long enough to document everything. Long enough to protect myself. Long enough to understand that the woman I married doesn't exist anymore, if she ever did. This isn't you, Thomas. You're not cruel. I wasn't. But then again, you weren't a cheater who committed fraud. People change, Jessica. You taught me that. She left without another word. I heard her car start, heard her drive away, heard the beginning of the end of everything we'd built together. Mitchell called the next morning with updates. Melissa Winters filed for divorce at 9 a.m. She's requesting full custody, citing David's inappropriate relationships with clients. Also, the wellness center terminated his lease effective immediately. Too much liability, especially after 3 more women came forward saying he'd propositioned them during private sessions. What about Jessica? Terminated from P&G at 10:30 a.m. Expense fraud. Violation of company ethics policy. They're demanding full restitution to avoid criminal charges, nearly $10,000. Jesus. It gets worse for her. P&G is also pursuing civil action for reputational damage. That viral video has been picked up by local news. Cincinnati marketing executive and fertility yoga love triangle is the headline on Channel 5. I turned on the news, and there it was. Jessica's professional headshot next to David's Instagram photo, with "Scandal" in bold red letters. The reporter was interviewing other women from the yoga class, all expressing shock and betrayal. I trusted him with my most vulnerable feelings, one woman said, face blurred for privacy. To find out he was using our pain to seduce students, it's disgusting. My phone rang. Jessica's sister, Laura. How could you do this to her? Laura screamed without preamble. She's pregnant and unemployed because of you. She's pregnant because she cheated on me. She's unemployed because she committed fraud. I just made sure the truth came out. You're a monster. No, I'm a man who found out his wife was pregnant by another man and stealing money to pay for their affair. But sure, I'm the monster here. Laura hung up. The divorce proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Jessica's attorney, clearly working pro bono through her sister's connections, tried to argue for spousal support. But Catherine was ready with documentation of the fraud, the affair, the misuse of marital funds. My client spent approximately $10,000 of marital funds on her extramarital relationship, Catherine argued in mediation. This should be deducted from her share of assets. Additionally, the house down payment came from Mr. Bradley's inheritance, making it separate property under Ohio law. Jessica's attorney countered weakly about the vasectomy deception, but Catherine shut it down. Mr. Bradley made a medical decision about his own body. That's not equivalent to fraud and adultery. Furthermore, Mrs. Bradley's pregnancy by another man while married constitutes clear evidence of adultery, which, while not directly relevant in Ohio's no-fault divorce law, speaks to the character issues that led to the financial misconduct. The mediator, a tired-looking woman who'd clearly seen it all, sided with us on almost every point. Jessica would get 40% of the joint assets minus the $10,000 fraud, no spousal support, no claim on the house. She'd keep her car and her personal property. The divorce would be final in 90 days. What about health insurance? Jessica asked quietly. I'm pregnant. Cobra is available for 18 months, the mediator said, though the premiums will be your responsibility. At $2,000 a month for Cobra, with no job and a baby coming, Jessica's financial picture was bleak. But that wasn't my problem anymore. David Winters fared even worse. Melissa's divorce attorney had connected with 4 other ex-clients, all with similar stories of private sessions that turned sexual. The lawsuits mounted quickly. His wellness center attempted rebranding, but the TikTok video had gone viral. 5 million views and counting. Someone had set it to music, turning his downfall into a meme. When your fertility guru's too fertile, with a remix of Yoga Fire playing over the confrontation. Local news picked up the story, investigating David's credentials. Turns out his certification in fertility coaching came from an online course that cost $299 and took a weekend to complete. His physical therapy license had been suspended 2 years ago for inappropriate conduct with a patient. The success stories on his website were mostly stock photos with fake testimonials. Jessica moved back to Michigan, living with her parents in the same bedroom she'd had in high school. She sent one email through her attorney. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my life." I didn't respond, but I thought about it. Was I happy? Not exactly. Satisfied, maybe. Relieved. Definitely. There was something clean about the truth, even when it burned everything down. 6 months later, I ran into Melissa Winters at Whole Foods. She recognized me immediately. Mitchell had eventually told her who'd sent the anonymous package. "Thomas, right? I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to." "No, I do. I knew something was wrong for years, but couldn't prove it. The DNA test on Sophie confirmed my suspicions, but your evidence made everything clear. Without those photos, I might have stayed, kept pretending." "How are the kids?" "Better. David has supervised visitation, pays support. Turns out 2 of my 3 kids aren't biologically his, but legally that doesn't matter. He raised them. He pays for them." She smiled grimly. "He's teaching chair yoga at the senior center now. Quite a come down from guru status." "And Jessica's baby?" "Due next month, I heard through the legal grapevine. David's not involved, can't afford another child support payment. Your ex is apparently working as a freelance social media manager, living in her childhood bedroom." We parted ways cordially. 2 people who'd been collateral damage in the same explosion but survived. The house felt different now, truly mine for the first time. I'd redecorated, removing all traces of Jessica's farmhouse chic aesthetic. The fertility supplements went in the trash, the yoga mats donated to Goodwill. The only thing I kept was the pregnancy test, sealed in a plastic bag in my safe. Evidence of the moment everything changed. Patricia from work had started bringing me lunch, claiming I looked too thin. We'd talk about supply chains and distribution problems, comfortable shop talk that sometimes extended to dinner. She knew my story, everyone did, thanks to that viral video, but never pushed for details. "You did what you had to do," she said once over Chinese takeout. "Protecting yourself isn't cruel, it's necessary." Some people think I went too far. The anonymous tip to P&G, sending the information to Melissa. She was stealing from her company and cheating on you. He was exploiting vulnerable women. You just made sure the truth came out. That's not revenge, that's justice. Maybe she was right. Or maybe I had become cruel, calculating, cold. But Jessica had taught me that sometimes the person you trust most is the one positioning the knife. Better to see it coming and dodge than stand there and bleed. A year after the pregnancy test discovery, I got a notification from LinkedIn. Jessica had viewed my profile. Her new job, marketing coordinator at a small firm in Grand Rapids, a massive step down from P&G senior manager. Her profile photo showed her holding a baby girl, Sarah, according to the birth announcement her sister had posted on Facebook. Sarah Nicole Bradley. Not Winters, thankfully. A beautiful baby with David's dark eyes and Jessica's nose, carrying the name of a marriage that no longer existed. An innocent child born from deception who'd grow up with a complicated truth about her origins. I felt something then, not satisfaction or revenge, but sadness. For Sarah, mostly. She didn't ask to be conceived in a web of lies, didn't choose to be the living evidence of her mother's destruction. I opened a new savings account that day, setting up automatic monthly deposits of $500. Anonymous contributions for Sarah's future education. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement that children shouldn't pay for their parents' choices. The account would mature when she turned 18. Enough for a year of state college or a start on life away from the shadow of her origins. 2 years passed. Thomas Bradley, 42 now, logistics director promoted to regional manager, divorced, vasectomy reversed in a symbolic gesture, though I wasn't ready to trust again. I'd won, if you could call it that. Won the house, won the financial settlement, won the narrative. But victories in broken marriages are Pyrrhic at best. You win by losing less than the other person. Patricia and I had progressed from lunch to dinner to weekend trips. Nothing official, nothing labeled, Just two people who understood that trust was earned in increments, not given wholesale. She'd been divorced too. Her ex had gambled away their savings, so she understood the careful reconstruction of a life. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one evening as we watched the sunset from my deck. "Not trying to work it out?" "How do you work out a pregnancy from another man when you've had a vasectomy?" I replied. "Some things are just too broken." "Fair point," Mitchell called occasionally with updates. His business had boomed after the Winters case. Apparently, Cincinnati had no shortage of suspicious spouses. David was still teaching at the senior center, living in a one-bedroom apartment, wages garnished for child support to multiple women. The wellness center had reopened under new management with strict policies about instructor-student relationships. "You created quite a ripple effect," Mitchell told me over coffee. 3 other yoga studios in town implemented new ethics policies. P&G revised their expense audit procedures. Hell, I even heard some fertility clinics started requiring background checks on alternative therapy referrals. All from one pregnancy test in a trash can. Butterfly effect, my friend. One small discovery, massive consequences. Jessica had started a blog about single motherhood and rising from the ashes of betrayal. The irony was spectacular, but I didn't read it. Laura had sent me the link with a nasty message about seeing her side, but there was no side that justified fraud and adultery. There was only truth and consequences. The Thursday night yoga classes still happened at the wellness center. I drove by once, saw women arriving with their rolled mats and water bottles, hope in their eyes. Different teacher, same dreams. The eternal optimism of people wanting to believe in miracles, even when statistics and science suggested otherwise. Sarah would be walking now, talking, forming her first memories. I wondered if Jessica ever told her about her father, if David even knew what his daughter looked like beyond court-mandated photos. The support payments would continue until she was 18, but money wasn't the same as presents. My phone buzzed. Patricia texting about dinner plans. "That new Italian place? 7 p.m.? Sounds perfect," I replied. I thought about the trajectory of the past 2 years. From that fevered Thursday discovery to public humiliation, to legal vindication to this. A quiet life rebuilt on truth rather than deception. No tracking of fertile windows, no mysterious Thursday meetings, no receipts that didn't match reality. Just honest interactions with someone who'd earned trust through consistency rather than demanding it through marriage vows. The pregnancy test was still in my safe, alongside the divorce decree and the vasectomy reversal certificate. Artifacts of a different life, reminders that sometimes the smallest things reveal the biggest truths. 2 pink lines that ended a marriage, exposed a fraud, destroyed a business, and taught me that the person sleeping beside you might be carrying someone else's future. Jessica and I had tried for 3 years to have a baby together. In the end, she succeeded. Just not with me. The irony would be funny if it weren't so pathetic. All those fertility treatments, supplements, yoga poses, when what she really needed was a different partner. David Winters, the miracle worker, who gave desperate women what their husbands couldn't, then charged them for the privilege. But I'd had the last word, delivered not in anger but in careful, methodical justice. Every receipt collected, every movement tracked, every lie documented. The revenge served at exactly the right temperature, cold, calculated, and completely legal. No violence, no screaming, just consequences delivered with timestamp photos and expense reports. The fertility yoga story had become local legend, a cautionary tale whispered at Cincinnati dinner parties and mom groups. The TikTok video had spawned think pieces about medical ethics, fertility fraud, and the exploitation of desperate women. David's name had become a verb in certain circles. Don't get wintered, meaning don't let hope blind you to obvious deception. A news alert popped up on my phone. Former P&G executive sues fertility coach for emotional damages. Jessica was trying to recoup something from the disaster, claiming David had manipulated her during a vulnerable time. Good luck with that. Hard to claim manipulation when you were actively defrauding your employer to pay for the affair. Patricia arrived for dinner and we didn't talk about the past. We discussed supply chain innovations, the new Netflix series we were watching, plans for a vacation to Seattle, ironically, the same city where I'd been during Jessica's final betrayal. But now it was just a city, not a crime scene. You know what I appreciate about us? Patricia said over dessert. Complete transparency. No hidden agendas, no secret plans, just truth. Learned that lesson the hard way. We both did. Maybe that's why this works. 3 years after the discovery, I got a call from an unknown Michigan number. Jessica's mother. Thomas? This is Linda Bradley. Linda. I'm calling about Sarah. Jessica doesn't know I'm calling. Is she okay? The little girl. She's beautiful, healthy, smart as a whip. But Jessica is struggling. The freelance work isn't steady, and David hasn't paid support in 6 months. I found out about the education account you set up for Sarah. I was silent. The account was supposed to be anonymous. The bank made an error, included a transfer reference that led back to you. I wanted to thank you for not punishing the child for her parents' mistakes. She's innocent in all this. You're a good man, Thomas. Despite what Jessica says. You could have been vengeful, but you were just... How is Jessica really? Broken, if I'm honest. Not from the divorce or the job loss, but from realizing what she threw away for nothing. David was apparently sleeping with 4 other women during their relationship. She was just another mark. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. But you're polite enough to say so. That's more grace than she deserves. After Linda hung up, I sat in my office looking at the framed photo Patricia had taken of us at a supply chain conference. We looked comfortable, content, undramatic. No passion like Jessica and I had in the beginning, but no lies either. The conference was in Las Vegas, and I'd paid for everything transparently. Personal credit card for personal expenses, company card for business expenses, every receipt accurately categorized. Patricia had done the same. We'd even split dinner bills when the conversation turned personal rather than professional. It was unsexy but honest. My phone rang. Mitchell. Thomas, thought you should know. David Winters was arrested yesterday. For what? Fraud. Turns out he was billing insurance companies for physical therapy services he wasn't licensed to provide. Some of his fertility coaching clients had submitted claims. Insurance fraud is a federal crime. How long? If convicted? 3 to 5 years. Plus he owes back taxes, child support, civil judgments. The man's going to be paying for his crimes literally and figuratively for the next decade. I felt no satisfaction, just a sense of completion. Everyone had faced their consequences. David in legal trouble, Jessica in financial ruin and social exile, me in a rebuilt life that was smaller but more honest. Thanks for letting me know. No problem. By the way, I'm writing a book about the case. Changed names, of course, but the story's too good not to tell. That okay with you? As long as I'm not identifiable, sure. The story had taken on a life of its own. The fertility yoga scandal had its own Wikipedia page, though my name wasn't mentioned. Jessica was listed as Female Marketing Executive A and David as Wellness Instructor. Melissa had given an interview to a podcast about surviving spousal betrayal, though she'd been careful not to name names. 5 years after the pregnancy test, I stood in my backyard grilling steaks for Patricia's birthday. We'd been officially together for 2 years, living together for 6 months. No marriage plans. Neither of us needed that particular contract again. But we'd updated our wills, designated each other as medical decision makers, the practical stuff that mattered more than white dresses and wedding vows. Tom, Patricia called from inside. Come look at this. On her laptop was a news article. Disgraced yoga instructor pleads guilty to federal charges. David's mugshot showed a man who'd aged a decade in 5 years. The article detailed his fraud scheme, the multiple women he'd impregnated, the trail of financial and emotional destruction. But at the bottom was an update on Jessica. She'd apparently remarried, a divorced plumber she'd met at a single-parent support group. They lived in a modest ranch house in Grand Rapids. The article included a quote from her. "I've learned that happiness isn't about chasing miracles but accepting reality." Good for her, Patricia said, and meant it. Everyone deserves a second chance at getting it right. Even after what she did, especially after what she did. The consequences were severe enough. 5 years of struggling, raising a child alone mostly, career destroyed. That's sufficient punishment. She was right. I'd gotten my justice, my vindication, my clean break. Continuing to carry anger would only poison my own well. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I took the pregnancy test out of the safe and threw it away. Not in some ceremonial burning, just dropped it in the kitchen trash among coffee grounds and junk mail. It had served its purpose as evidence, as reminder, as symbol. Now it was just medical waste. Patricia found me sitting on the deck afterward, bourbon in hand. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking about time. 5 years ago, my life exploded. Now it's this. This being good? This being real. No pretense, no elaborate deceptions, no tracking ovulation windows or scheduling fake client dinners, just actual life. Boring, some might say. Boring is underrated. Give me boring truth over exciting lies any day." Sarah would be starting kindergarten soon. The education fund had grown to nearly $40,000 with compound interest. She'd have options her mother's choices had nearly eliminated. Maybe college, maybe trade school, maybe starting a business. Whatever she chose, it wouldn't be limited by the circumstances of her conception. The wellness center had been sold, turned into a CrossFit gym. The Thursday night yoga class had moved to the community center, taught by a retired nurse who was actually certified and had no interest in private sessions. The women who attended probably had no idea about the history, the scandal that had started in that very time slot. David was in federal prison, would be for another 2 years. Melissa had remarried too, to a pediatrician she'd met at a medical conference. Her kids were thriving, the two who weren't biologically, David's never knowing that fact. Some truths didn't need revealing. Jessica's blog had evolved from bitter single-mother rants to practical advice about rebuilding after public humiliation. Her most popular post was titled, "When You're the Villain in Someone Else's Story." I'd read that one, couldn't help myself. It was surprisingly self-aware, acknowledging her role in her own destruction without excusing it. She wrote, "I was so desperate for a miracle that I created a disaster. I wanted a baby so badly that I destroyed my marriage, my career, my reputation. The baby I got is a blessing, but the cost was everything else. If you're reading this while considering an affair, thinking it's worth it for love or passion or whatever lie you're telling yourself, it's not. The bill always comes due, and it's always higher than you imagined." I wondered if she knew I'd set up Sarah's education fund. Probably not, if Linda had kept that secret. It was better that way. Not everything needed acknowledgement or gratitude. Some acts of grace were better left anonymous. The 10-year mark arrived with little fanfare. Patricia and I had bought a new house together, selling mine to a young couple who had no idea about its history. The equity split between us. Genuine joint property for the first time in my life. We'd adopted 2 dogs, traveled to Europe, built something solid if unspectacular. I got a friend request on Facebook from an account with no photo. Sarah Bradley. Her message was simple. "My grandmother says you knew my mother. Could we talk?" She was 10 now, old enough to use social media, though probably not supposed to. Old enough to wonder about her origins, her father who existed only as court-mandated support payments. I thought about it for a long time, then responded, "Your mother and I were married once. It didn't work out. But you should know you were very wanted, even if the circumstances were complicated. My mom says my dad was a mistake. People make mistakes. But children never are. You're not responsible for how you came to be, only for who you choose to become. She also says you ruined her life." I revealed the truth. What happened after that was consequences, not revenge. What's the difference? Smart kid. Revenge is emotional, intended to hurt. Consequences are natural results of actions. Like if you touch a hot stove, getting burned isn't the stove's revenge. It's just what happens. Oh, we chatted a bit more, carefully. I didn't tell her about the education fund or the details of her mother's deception. She didn't need that burden. But I tried to give her something Jessica probably couldn't. Perspective that her existence, while born from pain, wasn't itself painful. Did you love my mom? She asked finally. Very much once. But love without trust is just passion, and passion burns out. Remember that when you're older. I will. Thank you for talking to me. Take care, Sarah. She unfriended me after that conversation, which was appropriate. We weren't family, weren't friends. We're barely connected except through the complicated geometry of adult failures. But I hoped she'd gotten what she needed. Confirmation that she wasn't a mistake, even if she was the product of one. Patricia never asked about the conversation, though she knew it had happened. That was her gift. Understanding which spaces in my history needed air and which needed silence. Would you do it all differently? She asked one night, apropos of nothing. Which part? The vasectomy. Not telling Jessica. Yes, I should have been honest. But then again, she should have been honest about David. We both made choices that led to that ending. But yours was trying to protect her from more miscarriages. Intent doesn't erase deception. I lied by omission for 2 years. She lied by commission for 4 months. Both were wrong, though I'd argue the scale was different. And the revenge? The reports, the anonymous tips? That wasn't revenge. That was just accelerating the inevitable. The truth would have come out eventually. The pregnancy guaranteed that. I just made sure it came out on my timeline, with my control, rather than being ambushed by it later. Patricia nodded. I would have done the same. And that's why we worked. Not because we were perfect, but because we understood that sometimes protecting yourself required harsh actions. That knowing when someone was lying to you was a survival skill. That trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired, only replaced with something different. The 15-year anniversary of the pregnancy test discovery passed without me noticing until a week later. November 14th had become just another day, no longer circled in mental red ink. Jessica had moved again according to LinkedIn, marketing director at a nonprofit in Detroit. Good for her. David was out of prison but unemployable in anything healthcare adjacent, last spotted working at a car dealership in Columbus. Melissa Winters, now Melissa Patterson, had written a book about surviving infidelity and paternity fraud. It was actually quite good, balanced and thoughtful rather than vengeful. She sent me a signed copy with a note. Thank you for the truth, even though it hurt. Sarah would be 15 now, a teenager navigating high school with all its complexities. The education fund had grown to over $100,000. She'd have choices, opportunities, a chance at a future unburdened by student loans. It was the only gift I could give her, the chance to start clean. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Michigan. Hello? Thomas? It's Jessica. Her voice was older, tired, worn down by 15 years of consequences. Jessica. I know I shouldn't be calling. But Sarah told me about your conversation 5 years ago, and I just found out about the education fund. How? She's smart, did some digging when she turned 15, found the account, traced it back through some banking error. She knows it's you. And I wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry for everything. It was a long time ago. Not long enough to forget. I destroyed everything for nothing. David was sleeping with half his clients. I was just another naive woman who thought she was special. You were desperate for a baby. Desperate people do desperate things. You weren't desperate. You were patient, calculated, methodical. You destroyed me completely. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. She laughed, bitter but real. Fair enough. I committed the crimes. You just reported them. How's Sarah? Beautiful, brilliant, angry? She knows David's her biological father but wants nothing to do with him. Calls my husband Dad. He's good to her. Adopted her last year when David signed away parental rights to avoid back support. That's good. She deserves stability. She deserves better than what she got. But we do our best with what we have. Yes, we do. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. Could picture her in some suburban kitchen, graying hair and crow's feet. The beauty that had once captivated me, weathered by time and truth. I loved you, she said finally. Even during the affair. I loved you but wanted a baby more. That probably doesn't make sense. It does, actually. Love and want aren't the same thing. You loved me but wanted what David was offering. The tragedy is, you could have had both if you'd been honest about the vasectomy from the start. Would you have reversed it? Maybe. If we'd discussed it honestly, gone to counseling, made a mutual decision. But we'll never know because neither of us was honest. I guess we both got what we deserved. We got what our choices earned us. That's not quite the same thing. Goodbye, Thomas. Goodbye, Jessica. Take care of Sarah. With my life. She hung up, and I knew we'd never speak again. There was nothing left to say, no wounds to heal, no forgiveness to grant or receive. Just two people who'd once promised forever and delivered barely 4 years, leaving casualties in our wake. But from that wreckage, we'd both built something new. Not better necessarily, but truer. Lives based on transparency rather than deception, on earned trust rather than assumed faith. The pregnancy test that had started it all was long gone, but its lesson remained. The truth always surfaces, and it's better to be the one revealing it than the one it's revealed about. Patricia found me on the deck, watching the sun set over Cincinnati's skyline. Jessica, she asked. Yeah, calling to say thanks for Sarah's college fund. And nothing. Just two people acknowledging the past and returning to their presence. She sat beside me, our fingers intertwining naturally after years of practice. Any regrets? About which part? Any of it. All of it. I thought about it, really considered the question. The lies, the investigation, the revelations, the destruction, the rebuild, the baby that wasn't mine, the marriage that wasn't real, the revenge that wasn't revenge but justice delivered cold. No, I said finally. Regret implies I'd do it differently. But every choice led to this moment, sitting here with you, honest and whole. Jessica has her daughter and a second chance. David faced his crimes. Melissa found truth and freedom. Even Sarah gets a funded education. Everyone ended up where their choices led them. That's a very logical way to look at emotional devastation. I'm a logistics director. Everything is supply chains and delivery systems to me, even justice. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Somewhere in Michigan, a teenage girl was doing homework, funded by a father who wasn't her father. Somewhere in Columbus, a disgraced guru was selling used cars. Somewhere in Cincinnati, a woman who'd helped expose the truth was tucking her kids into bed. And here in my backyard, I sat with a woman who knew my whole story and chose to stay anyway, building something new on the ashes of something that had to burn. The pregnancy test had been positive. The marriage test had failed. But the test of character, of standing up for truth even when it hurt, of delivering consequences with precision rather than passion. That test I'd passed. 2 pink lines had ended one life and started another. Not the life I'd planned, but the one I'd earned through careful documentation, strategic revelation, and the cold comfort of justice served at exactly the right temperature.